community work in my past life, I guess, and just in my personal life, not even work. I was involved in fundraising for whether it's a church or some of the organisations I'm involved with. And early last year, I was introduced to Destiny Rescue, and the more I learned about child trafficking in particular, the more I felt this was something I needed to get involved in and do whatever I can to stop it. And to help rescue the kids that were being trafficked and were being victimised by it. So, it was just happened to be one of those things I came across, and it's and the rest, as I say, is history.
Yeah. So, did you want to share your screen, and you can get started with whatever you'd like to talk about.
Hopefully, you can see.
Have you got a video on here? Because just remember to when you hit share, you share computer sound. Did you do that one?
Yes.
Yep, did that. You know what you're doing.
All right. Well, thanks. Thanks, Jerry, and hi everyone to whoever may be watching and attending here. And as Jerry said, this is an important topic, and child trafficking is something that can be quite confronting, and some of the things you will hear tonight can be a little bit confronting and upsetting, but there's also some hope in here as well. But it's nonetheless a very important topic, and I think it's something that we all need to be aware of, because it is something that we can stop. But when we talk about slavery, you may be surprised to know that there are actually more slaves in the world today, more people enslaved than we've ever had in our history. And the researchers tell us that there are over 40 million people enslaved in the world today. Now, when we talk about slavery, there's a whole range of things. There's forced labour, there's debt bondage, so there's forced marriage, and of course there is sexual slavery. And when I say there's more slaves in the world today than we've ever had in history, part of that is because of the cost of buying a slave. I mean, if you think back to what we mainly know as slavery back from the 1700s and 1800s, where slaves were stolen from Africa and brought over to the US to work on the plantations in the south of America, it would actually cost the equivalent of about $45,000 to buy a slave. So it was only the very rich who could afford to buy them. Nowadays, however, you can buy a human being for about $90. That means it's very easy to buy slaves, and that's just exploded the market. The worst thing is, out of those 40 million, 25% or just over 10 million are children. And a large chunk of those, unfortunately, are sold or trafficked, not necessarily sold, but trafficked into the sex trade. And in fact, the child sex trade is worth something like $99 billion a year. It's the second largest illegal trade, and it's the fastest growing trade, and it eclipses the profits of people like Apple and Coke and Disney and all those organizations. So it's an incredibly lucrative trade for these people. Now, the problem is there's 10 million children trafficked into the trade, but the International Labour Organization estimates that every year just over 1 million children are trafficked into the sex trade. So that's one every 31 seconds. So if you think about that in the context of not only tonight, say if we're on air for an hour, let's say, that's over 120 children that'll be trafficked in the time that we're online. Think about the course of your day at work, how many hours you're there, and how many people will be trafficked during that time. And the sad thing is, the average age is just 15 years. Now, I'm the father of a 17-year-old girl, and it makes me, I can't imagine having my daughter support me, let alone having to work in the trade like this. So when you think of that, it becomes really quite a personal thing for me as well. But the reality, and what drives us and what drives Destiny Rescue, is the fact that if we don't get to these girls tonight, someone else will. And when I say someone else will, it'll be someone who doesn't have the same intentions that we do when we're going to rescue children. And I've been in those situations. I've gone into bars undercover to identify kids, and I've seen what some of the customers behave like, and it's not very attractive. Now, I'm not sure if any of you have been to Thailand and to Pattaya in particular, But it's a beach resort, and there are a number of streets that are lined with bars, and at night they're just absolutely teeming with people. And when I first got there, I walked in this particular street. This is called Walking Street. When you get there, the atmosphere can actually be quite intoxicating if you don't know what's going on, because it's a warm night, there's neon lights, there's music blaring out of the venues, people walking up and down the street. It's almost like it could be a carnival anywhere. But it doesn't actually take you long before you realise there's something a little bit seedy. And the first thing is that, as you can see from the picture here, 95% of the people are males. And that's unusual when you go to many tourist places. Then you start to see girls outside the bar, some of them scantily clad and trying to entice you in. And then you see people like just on the right of the screen handing out menus. And on my first night, I thought he was actually touting for business for his restaurant. But it's not until I actually called one of them over and grabbed one and had a look at it that I realised it wasn't a menu for a restaurant, but rather a menu of the services and the things you can do with the girls in these bars. And the price list as well. So it's incredibly seedy. There's actually on this street, and the second bar that we went into, now we always work in groups of 2s or 3s. We went into a bar, and our job is basically just to go in and try and identify where there are young girls. And the second bar we walked into, we looked across, there was a girl who clearly looked too young to be in there. So I called her across, asked her to sit down and have a drink with me. And that's how a lot of them actually earn part of their money, is by encouraging customers to buy drinks, not only for themselves, but also for the girl as well. And called her over, ordered a drink, started to talk to her. I ended up talking to her for about 25 or 30 minutes. Her name was Far, and I found out that she was from a village about 7 hours north of Pattaya, up in the north of Thailand. Her family, she had a younger brother and older sister. And we just talked about, just everyday stuff, favourite music, all sorts of things. I then asked her about her little brother, and turns out he was 2 years old, and she said that her sister was at home, still in the village, looking after her little brother because her parents were quite ill. I said, well, how old's your sister? And she looked at me and said, well, she's 16. And then she went on and talked about a few other things. And it actually took a few seconds for that to sink into me, but she actually just told me her older sister was 16. So she effectively told me she was 14 or thereabouts, 15 at most. And I realised then why she changed the subject and started talking about a few other things. I didn't make a fuss about that. We just kept talking. And then I asked her why she came to Pattaya to work. And she said, well, because I'm trying to be a good daughter. I need to support my family. There's no jobs in the village, so I have to come and work. And trust me, and as a father, when I heard that, it was all I could do to just stop myself from picking her up and taking her out and rescuing her there and then. It was just incredibly difficult to hear that. As I said, I can't imagine, and I'm sure none of you can imagine your daughter having to support you in that way. But yet here she was thinking that's the only way that she could support her family. And I'd love to say that she was the only one that was an exception, but unfortunately there was more and more stories very similar to that, and many, many more girls that were in a similar position that we met over the nights that we were there. Luckily, it wasn't just the sad side and the bad side that I saw when we were over there. I also went to Cambodia and saw one of our safe homes while I was over there. And it's just a couple of pictures of some of the rooms where a lot of the activities go, computer skills, there's a bit of a hairdressing salon. And this is actually where the girls start to learn a little bit about how to be kids again. And it was actually here that I saw a couple of girls doing just that. And it brought such a big smile to my face. I was actually waiting to have a meeting with the country manager, the manager of this facility as well. And I heard outside a bit of a commotion. I went outside and there was these 3 girls in school uniforms running around, chasing each other, pulling hair, giggling, laughing. And they would have been, somewhere between 12 and 15 years old. And they were just doing what kids would do, just, having fun on their way home from school. And these were girls that literally 3 or 4 months ago had been working in these bars and had been taken out. And yet here they were, being kids again, doing what they should have been doing all along. And that's why we do what we do, because we want to give them hope and we want to get them living a normal life again. So probably wondering, well, how do kids become exploited? Well, there's a whole range of reasons why why children become exploited, but the number one factor is poverty. Now, poverty is not just the lack of cash. Poverty is the lack of choice as well. When I was talking to the country manager in Cambodia, he was telling me that in Cambodia, if you're uneducated and under 18, you literally have two choices for work. One is the textile industry and the other is the sex trade. Now, with the Modern Slavery Act and human labour laws around the world, the textile industry has decided they will no longer employ anyone under 18. That means if you don't have an education, you're under 18, you have no choice. If you want to earn money, it's a sex trade. And that's pretty much the same in a lot of other countries as well, because trafficking is not just what we think of, kids being stolen and chained to beds. Trafficking is when you have a lack of choice and you are forced to do things that you wouldn't normally do. And a lot of these kids end up in these places because they want to go and get a job, and then they're trapped or tricked or forced to stay doing things that they're not, that they don't want to do because they have no other choice. And when you get on top of that, the whole idea of the shame and honour cultural issue as well, it really stacks the odds against these kids, because they have this incredible sense of duty and obligation to support their family. And culturally, the financial support of the family tends to end up on the shoulders of the kids, and mainly the girls in these families. So this whole cultural issue around supporting your family is really prevalent in these kids, in their minds, about how they want to support their families. And if I think about young Far in a bar, when she's saying, I'm trying to be a good daughter, because she knows if she can't support her family, then not only will she be shamed in that she can't support the family, but her family will be shamed as well. So it's a terrible, terrible cycle that we need to get them out. And that's why we say if we don't get to them, someone else will. And if I told you some of the stories of the way people were acting in these bars, men that were literally, these girls could have been their granddaughters or great-granddaughters. It was just abhorrent to see men act the way they did with these girls. And why we have the success we do is because we don't treat them like that. We actually treat them with respect, and we don't touch them, we don't do any of that, and we talk to them, and we make them feel like they're just kids, or that they're just people that deserve to be respected. And that's how we start to build that trust. But we have to get to them so others don't, and this is where Destiny Rescue comes in. And Destiny Rescue was founded by an Australian by the name of Tony Kerwin. He's actually a Queenslander. And he set Destiny Rescue up 19 years ago. In October, it'll be 19 years. And he basically just came across this by accident. He was working in Thailand, helping to build an orphanage for another charity. And where unfortunately one night he overheard a couple of men talking about how they'd purchased a 12-year-old the night before for $400 and could do whatever they wanted with her. And he just felt that he couldn't stand by and do nothing. He just said, this is not okay, I have to do something. And it was as a result of that he started up Destiny Rescue. And we're now in 7 countries, mainly in Southeast Asia, but we're also in the Dominican Republic as well. And we've grown, we have probably, including volunteers, there's probably about 200 people across the world, mainly in the project nations. Many, I have to say, are actually volunteers. We actually have a very small number of staff that are actually on the payroll. Most are actually volunteers who funded themselves to this sort of work. So it's an amazingly loyal bunch of people that that help us out. But we also work very closely with organisations like the Australian Federal Police, the FBI, Interpol, and their equivalents in the nations that we work with. So what do we do? Well, the first part is obviously the rescue. We have to get these kids out before anything else. And there's 3 types of rescue that we do. The first is what we call a covert or an undercover rescue. And that's where we go in, similar to what I was doing, identifying underage girls and then building trust with them. And that can take weeks, it can take months, because many of these girls have been betrayed by people that they trust or thought they trusted. So it takes time to build up a bit of trust. But we go in there, we talk to them, we go and see them again, We never, talk about sex. We never do any of that. If we pay to take them away, it's always to sit down, have a meal, talk to them. And as we talk to them, we tell them about, the options. This is a very dangerous industry. Have you thought about maybe going back to school? We know people who can help you with a scholarship. We can know people who can help you get you another job. Is that something you might be interested in? And over time, once they feel they can trust us and they say, yes, we want to get out, we then take them out. The other type of rescue is a raid rescue. And this is where we actually go in and build up a portfolio of evidence. And we take video footage, voice recordings of transactions taking place, and that there are underage girls working in these establishments. We then take that evidence to the federal police and the anti-trafficking squads in those countries. They validate that evidence, and once they sanction a raid, we work out when it's going to be, and we create effectively a sting operation where we have an agent who goes in and films a transaction taking place. As soon as we have that transaction on film, the police come in, arrest the perpetrators and the pimps, and we take the children out. The third type of rescue is a border rescue, and that's where we're placed at various places in the border to try and rescue kids that are being trafficked over the border with the intent of trafficking them into bars and brothels. And we have the authority from the governments to actually be on those borders and stop people and interrogate, or not interrogate them, but question them about what they're doing in their activities. So that's what we do in terms of the rescue. Now, once the rescue happens, well, then what we do is create what we call the path to freedom, which is pretty much individualised for each child. Okay, now that may include either sending them back home to their own family, keeping in one of our own homes, or putting them up in a new home, semi-independent living with other children of similar ages. Now that all depends on age, level of trauma, and a whole range of things. Is it safe to send them home? Those sorts of things. The first thing, obviously, is medical attention, trauma counselling. But whichever scenario it is, they're supervised by our caseworkers and counsellors and agents to make sure they're all okay. And the first thing we do is make sure they get back into education, because most of these girls have either stopped going to school or have never been to school. So we get them back into education, because we know without that, they've got no choices. Then once that restoration process, if you like, is there, then we look at the reintegration phase, and that's where we get them back into the community, and that's where we start looking at things like vocational skills, potentially higher education, all those sorts of things, so they can then get or have the opportunity to get jobs in legitimate industries, so they don't have to resort or revert back to the sex trade. And that's an incredible part. And that can take anywhere from 3 months to 12 months or longer, depending on the child and the age and trauma, etc. But we try and get them through that process and give them the options. We also do preventative measures as well, where we go into communities and talk about, about trafficking and the risks of kids going out into the big cities and working. And that's, so we try and actually get in there before it happens. So that's an increasing part of our job as well. And it's as a result of these programs that we've got an 84% success rate. So we've tracked the girls over a 2-year period, and we know that 84% of the ones that we've worked with never go back to the trade, which is an incredible result for us, and we're incredibly proud of that. We lose track of 7%, unfortunately, and we know 9% do go back or thereabouts. And that keeps driving us to try and do as much as we can. But sometimes you just can't. Some girls you just can't keep them out, unfortunately. But 84% is a pretty amazing record. And since 2011, we've rescued over 5,000 lives. Last year we did over 1,400. This year our goal was for 1,600. That's going to be. We probably won't get that, and that's mainly because of the COVID scenario. It slowed us down a little bit, and while at first we thought this is great, all the bars and venues are closed because of COVID, unfortunately what we saw was the bulk of the activity then just move online, and these pimps selling kids on private Facebook groups, via TikTok, all sorts of social media channels. So we've now been trying to get into those, infiltrate some of those. We've actually done it a couple of times where we've gotten to know some of these girls and some of the pimps through these social channels, and had some sting operations and been able to rescue some kids through that. So hasn't been totally a shutdown, still going on, but we're still working on that. In fact, one of the problems we actually foresee is that with all the closures of all the businesses in these countries, there's going to be a lot more families pushed into poverty because a lot of them don't get access to benefits like we do here. We're incredibly privileged here in terms of the choice and the opportunities that we have. They don't have that over there, and that's again going back to the poverty. It's when you're forced with such abject poverty that you're forced to make decisions that you or I could never make. I mean, the choice we have here is incredible. That for most of these people, it's literally, do we eat or do we starve? And if we want to eat, where are we going to get the money? So that's the sort of the scenario we're looking at. But we're trying to get these kids out of there and give them options so they can have a proper life. And first and foremost, be kids, and then try and achieve whatever they want to achieve out of that as well. Now there's a short, it's just under 3 minutes. I'd like to show you this video, if you wouldn't mind. I think it's a really good video. And then I'll come back with a couple more things there. So I hope this comes through.
หนูทำงานตอนกลางคืนเนาะแล้วก็บวกกับเรียนไปด้วยแล้วมีพี่ผู้ชายคนหนึ่งเขามาดื่มอะไรอย่างเงี้ยเลยค่ะเขาก็ถามว่าหนูทำยังไงอยู่ที่ไหนมาทำงานที่นี่ได้ยังไงหนูก็เลยบอกว่าหนูเป็นคนแถวนั้นมันเป็นงานกลางคืนเนาะมันต้องนั่งดริ้งดื่มแล้วก็กลับดึกเพราะว่าเวลาเลิกงานมันอยู่ที่ว่าลูกค้าจะออกกี่โมงค่ะแล้วมันคือกระทบกับผลการเรียนนิดหน่อยก็คือเราอาจจะตื่นสายไปไม่ทันเรียนอะไรอย่างนี้ค่ะเรียนก็กำลังศึกษาอยู่ทำงานส่งตัวเองเรียนพี่เขาเลยบอกว่าให้หนูออกจากงานนี้แล้วเขาจะให้ทุนเป็นการศึกษาก็เลยมารู้จักกับพี่เขาตรงนี้ค่ะหมู่รวมแล้วก็ได้เรียนรู้เกี่ยวกับการตื่นเช้าช่วยกันได้เรียนรู้เกี่ยวกับรักในวัยรุ่นการมีเพศสัมพันธ์การป้องกันแล้วก็จะมีการดูแลตัวเองในชีวิตประจำวันก็คือป้องกันจากเชื้อโรคอะไรอย่างนี้ค่ะ
เวลาที่เราถูกงูกัดเวลาที่เรามีบาดแผลในชีวิตของเรารู้ว่าสาเหตุเกิดจากอะไรเราทำความเข้าใจกับมัน
แล้วก็ได้เรียนเกี่ยวกับการใช้ชีวิตในอดีต
ของแน็กมีใครบ้างในชีวิตที่เรารู้สึกว่าเราอยากจะให้อภัยกับบุคคลคนนั้น
คือแบบเป็นคนชาวบ้านค่ะคือแบบชอบใส่ร้ายให้เราแบบว่าก็พยายามแบบว่าจะไม่โกรธไม่เกลียดอะไรเขาพยายามจะคุยกับเขาว่าแม่หักคนอื่นมากกว่านอกหนูก็พูดนะแล้ววันนั้นแม่หนูก็บอกหนูรู้เลยว่าแม่กับพ่อใหม่เนี่ยเขารักหนูมากแค่ไหนแบบนี้
ช่วยได้เยอะเลยค่ะช่วยให้เรารู้ว่าควรปรับอารมณ์ยังไงแล้วก็ช่วยให้เรารู้ว่าบาดแผลในอดีตมันสามารถรักษาได้โดยการปล่อยวางการให้อภัยไม่คิดเยอะค่ะดีกว่าค่ะดีขึ้นในระดับหนึ่งก็คือจากที่เราเคยใช้ชีวิตแบบก็ชีวิตของหนูนะตอนนี้ก็ดีขึ้นในระดับหนึ่งค่ะอาจจะดีมากๆเพราะว่าค่ะ
I love Luan's story, and one of the things that I like about that is that she says that my life may now actually be very good, and it's that whole sense of hope that she has at the end there, and then it's exactly what we're trying to do for these kids, is give them back a sense of hope, give them back a sense of a future that they don't have, because the reality is these kids don't have a voice. they're used and abused and treated like a commodity, and something can just be thrown away. So they don't actually have a voice, and that's what we are trying to be for them, is a voice, so people can hear where they struggle, they can understand what they're going through, and hopefully try and help get them out of this. Because if she was here today, she would be saying, I don't need your sympathy, I don't need your compassion. What I need is to be rescued. And that's exactly what we try and do for these kids, is get them out of there, because they can live a full and fulfilling life. But we just need to get them out of that sex trade. In terms of the numbers, this is what it costs to rescue a child. $1,500 guarantees that a kid can be rescued and taken out of the sex trade. It costs around about just over $4,000 to provide 12 months of aftercare. Another $1,800 for vocational skills. A raid itself is $10,000. There's a lot of planning that goes into a raid. A lot of things have to fall into place for it to work. But in raids, we can rescue anywhere from 5 to 50 lives in one go. So the raids are where we're really trying to gear up the number of raids, especially once COVID starts to clear up and the bars open up again, because we know there's going to be a lot more kids trafficked into trade as a result of the increased poverty. So we're actually going to gear up that. But $1,500 to rescue a child, I don't think is a lot of money. You can start $50 a month. You could start by donating on a regular basis if people want to do that, or you can just donate as much as you can. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get these kids out of there, because if we don't do it, if we don't get in there, someone else will. And we know that these people don't have the right intentions and the same intentions that we do, because we want to see this sex trade. We want to see child trafficking in particular stopped if we can, and abolished within our lifetime if we can. And I think it's doable. Jerry, that's it.
Thank you.
I'm happy to take questions if anyone has questions. I'm more than happy to do that.
Yeah, told you everyone to bring the tissues, didn't I? I saw Annie wiping her eyes. Yeah, thank you so much for that education. And like I said before, it's really easy to get. Is that a tissue for me, David? Thank you. Yes, I need a virtual tissue. They look like the nice smelly ones too. Yeah, if you want to get involved, I've actually posted it on my Jerry Penny profile. There's a link that it's just a little bit.ly link, but it's one that Giorgio can actually track. And that's how every time that I do a strategy session with people, I just go straight to that link and do $50 on PayPal, and get a receipt. And it's great because then I can forward it to the person that had the session with me, and it shows them that their money went to the charity. And so if you know any other business owners that would like to do a similar thing like that, it's really, really easy to get on board. I know, David, yourself, you love supporting a charity every quarter at your business. So there's lots that businesses can do, just a little bit here and there. We had an event through BNI just the other week. An event that wouldn't normally be charged for, but she's charged $11 a ticket for it. And we had, I think, like 100 people register or something and pay that $11. And then the guest speaker actually decided that he would match each dollar that was raised as well. So they managed to actually save a child from that one event. So it was awesome, just with one little $11 event, what you can do. So there's so many different ways that that people can get involved in just choosing to support a charity. And I know that there's already 100,000 of them out there and everything like that, but if we can all find a few ways to support a few each, then it's all the more better world for that, isn't it? So has anyone else got any questions? No. I'll just
I've got one. Thanks for sharing, Giorgio. That's it's an amazing story and journey, and I think the organisation in of itself is really well presented too, very professional, which would really help getting the reach in what you do. And there's such lovely people too, like it's amazing that people can be forced, or it really is the only way that they can see at that point in time. So thank you for doing what you do. How many of the girls transition into like leadership roles at the schools and things like that? Is it like what many involved still in the future that come through?
Look, some of them do come back, and some of them will talk about their own experience back in what's happened to them. What we're proud of, though, is a lot of them then progress and do great things in their community. We've had quite a number of them who've actually got the skills and then set up a little business in their own communities back in their villages and employed people from their village, so they don't have to go to the big city and work. We've had others who've gone on to be policemen, be nurses, and all sorts of things, and get really positions that they wouldn't normally get. They didn't have the opportunity. And but sort of long-winded answer saying yes, some of them do come back and help out, but more of them go on and just have successful lives working for themselves or for other people, and they're able to support their family as well, and that's what they want to do. So, and this is why we have that what we call the individualised path to freedom, because every girl is a little bit different. Some of them say, I just want to be able to go back and work on our family farm. Okay, well, let's see what we can do, because if you're working on a farm, how is a farm run? So we look at things like, helping them with, maybe it's a micro loan, maybe it's how can we help the farm be a bit more established so they can sell more and things like that. So we help them work out what's best for them, so they can do what they want to do, rather than forced to do what they don't want to do just to support themselves. So there's a whole range of things that we do with them and their families to help them achieve the goals that they want. Some of them, it may be that they want to be a hairdresser. Some may be that they want to be a nurse. So what pathway we can help put them on to get those, and in the short term also help their families so they're not missing out on an income. Because that's there have been girls that while they've been going through this process, and their families are saying, we need money, can you get a job? We still need money. And that's where we try and help them out, with food packages, or sometimes a little bit of financial support if necessary, so the girls can actually still go through that process and have more options.
So it's a massive ripple effect too, isn't it? Just by having someone as an advocate that's been through that kind of trauma or situation back in the village. I think that's that's amazing. So and do you get much support like from a government level?
Here or over there?
Oh, well, like over there.
We do. We have good relationships now with most of the governments. There are 3 countries that we operate in where we don't, and those countries we're not allowed to name for political reasons, and for the same reason that we don't get help. So we don't mention them, because then we're not supposed to be there. But in the countries like Thailand, Philippines, Cambodia, we get good support, especially Philippines. They're incredibly supportive. The federal government there and their national anti-trafficking unit, and I think it's the NBI in Thailand as well, National Bureau of Investigation. We get a lot of support from them, and they're the ones that we deal with when we're having raids, when we do raids. We don't deal with local police, and that's out of experience, unfortunately. We found early days when we were working with the local police, almost every other raid there would be a tip-off, and then we found out that a lot of those bars and brothels were owned by the local police. So so we learned very early days that we've got to be very careful who we deal with. And now that we deal at the federal level and with those anti-trafficking units, the success rate is a lot greater as well, because there's no tip-offs, there's not as much corruption up at that level.
Oh, awesome. And where can we
financial
find
support?
No, and financial support?
Yeah, we don't get financial support from the government, our government or their governments. They just don't have the funds to do that. They're struggling to fund an anti-trafficking unit and a federal force, small forces to fight this thing. So a lot of that we have to supply our own resources. A lot of the times they just supply the bodies and then do the arrests and prosecute.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And where can we find out more information? Like if you want to donate or get a bit more involved in your cause, what's the best platform to get in touch?
I've posted the link on the All4One Facebook page. Link.
Awesome.
Not link.
Yep.
So there is there's a link there for one-off giving, and there's a link there for monthly giving, and that's actually a link that Giorgio can track then. So
awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jerry.
Because Giorgio is
excuse me, guys,
a representative for Destiny Rescue. Yes, Alistair, welcome.
Yes, sorry, I could come at the end. Sorry to have missed your presentation, Giorgio. So thanks for asking that question, Luke. And I guess I've just we've got Giorgio, Jerry, Luke. Who else is on?
Annie's here and David is here.
Annie.
Yeah.
Annie and David, awesome. I mean, I wonder as a group, you know, can we see anything that we can do? I'll certainly have a look at the link you put up, Jerry, but is there anything else we can do as a group?
Yeah, well, certainly I would hope that, you know, maybe through our workshop series or something like that, if we're selling tickets or something like that, you know, we could do some kind of ticket sale arrangement or something like that to support Destiny Rescue. It's up to the group as a collective, of course, but I think there's always something that we can be doing, and you know, even if it's just $5 a ticket, you know, things like that can really make a difference. So
yeah, well, I certainly support if we raise any money to just to put some of it there for sure.
Yeah,
thank you.
So thanks everyone for joining us tonight. We're right on time for once. This is the All4One, One for All community. We just do whatever. We are our own little nation of of people. We don't have to wear masks when we're online, so that's great. And we meet weekly, every Monday night at 8 o'clock. There's something happening on Facebook Live or something. Don't start yawning, Annie. Jeez, you started me. And yeah, we're usually we've got someone talking about something fabulous, something not so fabulous, or we're planning a workshop series, which is what we are doing at the moment. We might head back to that next week unless we've organised another speaker. So if you out there want to practice your speaking abilities, make sure that you jump on one of our calls on a Monday night. That's one of the only few prerequisites, is to come on a live call first, and then you may put up your hand and ask if you'd like to deliver some kind of talk about anything you like. Even there's something as strange as called a hoponopono. Hey, David. I would never say that right. But anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. We are at bit.ly/all4one community. That's our Facebook group, numeral 4. And check out our Facebook page, All4One Australia, with the number 4 again, I think. I don't know. Just search for us. So that's from us tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.